Good morning. This is our seventh session on Business Research Lab. In last session, we talked about independent sample t-test, where we talked about two groups in a given sample, which were being compared in terms of the variable of interest. Like we had an example of students of the undergraduate class and their scores in Business Research Lab. The students can be divided into two groups, girls and boys, and the scores they have in the Business Research Lab. And then we can compare the mean of girls with those of boys and see to it whether there's a significant difference in the scores of girls and the boys. If the difference is not much and significance level or P level is more than 0.05, we accept the null hypothesis that there is no significant difference in the mean scores of girls and boys for Business Research Lab. But in case the significance was found to be quite high, 0.05 or less than that, in that case, we would have come to the conclusion that the mean scores of girls and boys are significantly different and would have accepted the alternate hypothesis. Coming to today's topic, we are talking about the dependent samples, which is also known as paired sample t-test. This is used when the mean of one sample is compared to the mean of another sample, where the two samples are related one way or the other. The two samples here may consist of either the same people measured on two occasions or related people who have been measured once. Example like identical twins on IQ, husbands and wives on quality of communication. And when we are talking of, you can say, dependent sample t-test or paired sample t-test, the major concern should be identifying the dependent samples t-test is to remember the two samples are naturally related to one way to each other, one way or the other. Let's have an example of dependent sample t-test. A worker for National Polling Organization was charged with the task of surveying the public to determine which issue was more important to voters, the economy or national security. 25 personnel, potential voters, were asked to indicate the importance of each of the two issues on 1 to 7 scale, where 1 is not at all important and 7 is extremely important. The independent variable is the voter issue, that is economy or national security, and dependent variable is the importance rating. So if you look at this example again, we are talking about the national polling being done, and the worker who is working with the task of surveying is trying to find out that which is more important to the voter. Is it the economy or the national security? So he selects 25 potential voters, and they were asked to indicate whether they feel that economy is important or national security is important, and they have to rate both the variables in the score of 1 to 7, where 1 is not important at all, 7 is extremely important. So if you look at the dependent sample t-test or paired sample t-test, we come up with the conclusion that the objective is to test the means of two groups and see to it whether they are significantly different on a dependent variable of interest. So if we are talking about independent sample t-test or paired sample t-test, we are basically talking about one independent variable with two related groups of categories. Independent variable, that is in this case of example, we have the voter issues, that is one is economy and second is national security. And we have one continuous dependent variable, Dependent variable is importance rating on 1 to 7 scale. That's there. Now we have the hypothesis, and if you look at the hypothesis, we have the null hypothesis, which states the difference in the importance rating for economy and national security is equal to 0 in the population. This means hypothesis neutral is mean economy minus mean national security is 0. So there is no significant difference in the importance given to economy or national security as an issue by the voters for the national polling. So that is our null hypothesis. If you are looking at the alternate hypothesis, here we are stating that the difference in the importance rating is not equal to 0 in the population. This means hypothesis alternate is mean of economy minus mean of national security is not equal to 0. This means that there is significant difference in the level of importance given by voters for national polling for economy vis-a-vis national security. Now, talking about the evaluation of these hypotheses, if significance value comes to, you can say, more than 0.05, we are accepting the null hypothesis. If significance value comes to, you can say, less than equal to 0.5, we are accepting the alternate hypothesis. Now, talking about the research question here, if you look at the research question is a question where we are trying to, you can say, just frame a question which we'll be answering in our analysis. Here we are talking about the polling and two issues of importance. One is economy, second is national importance, and we are trying to figure out, is there a significant difference as far as voters are concerned about their rating for economy and national security as variable of importance. So the research question will be, is there a difference in the perceived importance of economy and national security for the voters? So that becomes the research question. Now coming to the data and trying to solve the data, we'll be just moving for, you can say, the test. And when we move for the test, we'll be just talking about you can say, the analysis to be done. And for that, what I'll do is I'll just try to, you can say, copy these two variables here, and then maybe you can say from these variables here we'll move to the new share. We are moving to the opened, you can say, blank SPSS file I've got. So I have opened the file, I'm moving to data view, I'm pasting the two, you can say, variables, and I'm also, you can say, at the same time giving the new share. So the new share is, you can say, the file we have got, and again you can say we had some data left here. So that data I'm copying, and again I'm moving to, you can say, new share. That share is here and this is there. So I'm moving to it. So this is it, and here we go, and this is it. So we have the two variables here. So we have got a data of 25 respondents, and these have been named as variable 1 and variable 2. Now we have to actually name them correctly, and therefore we move to variable view. Variable 1, we all know, is talking about the economy, and variable 2 will be labeling it also. I'm just naming it an economy, and then values we have got is, let's have the values here. 1, not important. 2, somewhat important, 3, fairly important, 4, important, 5, highly important, and then we have the last 6. Let's change this. And 7, extremely important. I've named these variables in the scale of, you can say, importance. I've done OK to it. And then we are talking about the measure. The measure is basically scale. Similarly, how these people have rated the other variable, that is national security. So I'm just naming it as security rather than national security. I'm just naming it as security. Okay, and here in label I'll write national security. And then we are, you can say, giving the values for the label. So what I do is I simply, you can say, copy it from here. So copy, and I'm pasting it here. So I've pasted it. Measure again happens to be scale. So this is how you can say our SPSS file now appears. We have named the two variables as economy and security, made the labels there, given the values, and written the measure also. Data view is also mentioned before us. So we have the, sorry, data view is already now there. So economy and security becomes the two variables which we are talking about. Now coming to the analysis part. And when we are talking on the analysis part, we are going to analyze. The first thing we do is we go to analyze. Now, after analyze, we go to compare means. And in compare means, we are talking about, we already covered one sample t-test. Last time we talked about independent sample with t-test. And today, in the last exercise on t-test, we are talking about paired sample t-test. So let's click on this, paired sample t-test, dependent sample t-test, whatever it is, this is what we are going to use. So paired sample t-test or dependent sample t-test, same thing. We're using paired sample t-test. Let's click on this. Here we get. So we have got pair 1 economy, that is variable 1. And second variable happens to be the national security. So these two variables we have got and we have paired them. And then we simply click on OK. And I'm not turning to that. I'm turning to, you can say, the to new share, where I'll be showing you the output file. So now the output file is in front of you. So this is what the output file basically is. So this is the output file. If you look here, we have got the answers. We have, first of all, we have got the paired sample statistics. The statistics says that economy is given more importance. 5.68 is the mean which is being given by people, those 15 people. The same 15 people have given a mean of, you can say, as far as importance concerned, is 4.6. And since we had 25 people there, so n comes to 25 in both the cases. Standard deviation is 1.21 for economy, and for national security it is 1.77. So that's given to us. Now there's something called, you can say, the correlation coming up. How these two variables are correlating to each other. We'll be ignoring this particular, you can say, data right now, because that's not to be done here. But correlation you can say is not that significant. So the two variables are not correlated. Correlation basically is, as we have talked in the previous semester when we were talking about the stats paper, that when one variable increases, the other variable also increases. That is a positive correlation. When one variable decreases, the other variable also decreases. That is inverse relationship or inverse correlation. Now we have talked about these types of correlation previously, and here if you look at, you can say there doesn't appear to be much, you can say, difference, and you can say that the two variables are not very strongly related, because if you look at the significance value or the p-value, that comes to be, you can say, very high as compared to 0.05. Had this value here been 0.05 or 0. Less than 0.05, we would have said that okay fine, the two variables are highly correlated, maybe inversely or directly. But in this case, the variables are not correlated. Done. Now, talking about our exercise for the day, we are getting, you can say, two things here. We are getting first the mean and the standard deviation. Now, this mean and standard deviation is very important for us to understand the effect size. So I'll talk on that a bit later, but just remember the values we have got. We have got a value of 1.08 for mean. We have got a value of standard deviation for you can say, standard deviation value is 1.80. So if you look at the things, we have talked about something called effect size. If you look at effect size is equal to, in case of paired sample or dependent samples, the effect size is equal to difference in mean of the two groups or two variables, you can say, upon the standard deviation. So the answer is 1.08 divided by 1.8, and if you actually, you can say, do the test, the value you'll get is 0.6. So 0.6 is the effect size. So this is something we are knowing from these two values here. So we know that the effect size is 0.6. Okay, and then we are looking at the t value. The t value that comes up is 2.998. It is if you look here, you can say the numerator happens to be higher than the denominator, and therefore the value is coming as positive. If numerator is higher than the denominator, the value will come as positive. It doesn't make a difference, but then okay fine, it's just a way of, you can say, how the answer t is coming in a positive way. So here the t value is coming in positive only because economy happens to be higher as compared to national security, and we have placed economy as 1 and national security as 2. Had we placed national security as 1, economy as 2, that is, you can say, national security would have become numerator and economy would have become denominator. In that case, you can say the value of t would have been negative. But that doesn't make a difference, and therefore there is nothing called plus or minus in case of t. We simply have to write the value of t, nothing like plus or minus after it. So here the value of t happens to be 2.998, which is quite high. And if the value of t happens to be, you can say, more than 2, be assured that you are having a significant value coming up. Here the value is 2.998, meaning that there's a significant difference. And if you look at the degree of freedom, df, it happens to be n minus 1. Here it is, you can say, 25 minus 1, so it is 24. And significance here happens to be, you can say, appreciably higher as compared to 0.05. It happens to be 0.006, which is 99.4% confidence interval level. So this means that we are accepting the alternate hypothesis that there happens to be a significant difference as far as the mean score is concerned, and people, you can say, they are giving more importance to economy than national security. So something like this will be our answers to it. So this was just an explanation of what we have, you can say, talked. I'll be just, you can say, revising the very test as far as the steps are concerned. So let me, you can say, move you back to the compare means part. And before I actually, you can say, explain on things, I'll be just resetting the data. Why I do it? Because resetting will ensure that I have ensured that okay fine, everything is back to the basics, and This is how you can see the screen will appear to you. You go to analyze, you go to compare means, you go to, you can say, this paired sample t-test, also known as dependent sample t-test. Click on this, and then you can say economy is the first variable. Click on this. National security is another variable. Click on this. Both these variables are in scale form. Good. Click on OK, and you get the answers. These are the answers you are getting. So you are getting, you can say, economy, and mean for economy 5.6, mean for national security 4.6, n value happens to be 25 respondents, and they are the same respondents who are answering for economy also, for national security also. Standard deviation happens to be 1.21 and 1.77 respectively for economy and national security. Peer sample data correlations, we are not to do much about it, but do remember, you can say that we have to see whether the two variables are highly correlated or positively or negatively. So are they directly correlated or are they inversely correlated? Here in this case, since the significance value comes to 0.114, the correlation is not very high. It is not supposed to be a significant correlation. So we are not accepting the correlation there. So that's there. And if you look at, you can say paired sample t-test. If you look at that line here, so peer one we are talking about. So economy, national security are the two variables. We have seen how they are, you can say, pairing together, or how you can say each variable are dependent or independent of each other. What we are finding is that the variables happens to be, you can say, not very much, you can say, dependent on each other. Because if you look at the mean comes to, you can say, 1.08, and standard deviation comes to 1.80. This is something which will be very important for us when we are calculating effect size. Effect size is equal to, effect size is given by small d. Small d is equal to mean difference of the two variables divided by the standard deviation of the two variables. And here, if you look at, you can say you are dividing 1.08 by 1.8, the answer comes to 0.6. One more thing, the t value, if you look at, is 2.998. This value 2.998 is coming, and this is something, you can say, which is significant, because the value of significance happens to be 0.006, which is very, very high as compared to the value which we actually consider for accepting the alternate hypothesis, that is 0.05. So we are accepting the alternate hypothesis that there is significant difference in the level of importance given by voters for economy vis-a-vis national security. So that was how the test was being done. Now I'm moving back you to the actual screen, and I'm moving you to the you can say the screen we had. So this is something we had, you can say, previously. So this is something we were talking about. So moving up again from here. So we are moving to the data part, data we have collected. Now there's something, you can say, talking about, you can say, assumptions. So assumptions, one should remember, you can say that assumption one, observations are independent within their group. Okay. And definitely you can say the second assumption, if you look at, data has to be, you can say, always normally distributed. That is something, you can say, which is very vital when you're doing all the tests. So data has to be in normal distribution. Now steps, I'll not be talking much, because steps is something we have already talked, and we have already discussed these steps. Now coming, you can say, to the conclusions, and finally writing the answers. So one thing we have to talk about is effect size. What is the effect size? So effect size we talked about. Effect size is mean difference upon standard deviation of different scores. So that is something we saw in the table itself. We had, you can say, D is equal to 1.08 divided by 1.8. The answer comes to 0.6. Now, if you remember the text, we know if effect size is 0.2, it's supposed to be small. If it is 0.5, it is supposed to be average or medium. If it is 0.8 or more, it is supposed to be large. Here in our case, since the effect size is 0.6, we are saying the effect size is medium or average. So that's there. And finally, coming to how are we going to write the answer? How we are using the APA, American, you can say, psychological associations, you can say, format is there, how to write the answer. So this is how the answer will be written. If you look at the file of SPSS and see, okay, how the results came up. So I've just briefed that, you can say, or summarized that particular answer, that table here, and look at the answer I've done. Voters view the economy mean is equal to 5.68. standard deviation is 1.21, as significantly more important than national security. Mean is equal to 4.60, standard deviation 1.78, comma t within bracket df happens to be n minus 1, so 25 minus 1 comes to 24 is equal to 2.98. And then we have got, you can say, the value of p, which is less than 0.05. So that is to be seen. So p value is less than 0.05. Actually the p value was equal to 0.006, so that we know. And d, that is the effect size, comes to 0.6. So this is how we are making the conclusions, and that is about this topic today. So I'll be just, you can say, adding up something more in terms of the example of the exercise for you. Thank you then. Thank you.